Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we are going to really get into Getting Things Done by David Allen.
That's right.
It seems like you really went through this one based on all the notes and highlights we've got here.
Yeah.
So we are going to help you figure out what are the real game-changing things in here
Yeah.
and how to actually apply them to your daily life.
Exactly. We're going to kind of unpack not just the mechanics of it, but the psychology behind why this stuff works.
Yeah.
Consider this like your cheat sheet for actually putting this stuff into practice.
Yeah.
To actually get to that mind like water that Alan always talks about.
Mind like water. Love that. Okay, so you flagged right at the beginning of the book, where he talks about this feeling of overwhelm.
Right.
That I think we all kind of experience these days. Like our brains are expected to be a supercomputer and a filing cabinet all at the same time.
It's brilliant the way he kind of nails that feeling that we all have, right? Where our minds are just constantly bombarded with to-dos and ideas and commitments and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And his argument is that our brains just aren't meant to hold all that stuff.
Yeah.
That if we try to keep it all in our heads, it creates this kind of psychic RAM overload.
Yeah.
And that's what leaves us feeling so stressed and unproductive.
And I think that's where his idea of capturing comes in, right?
Yeah.
Like you underline that multiple times in your notes.
Absolutely.
He's really adamant about getting everything out of your head.
Yeah, it's radical, but it's really key. I think most people just totally underestimate just how much is swirling around up there.
Right.
It's not even just, tasks, but it's ideas, it's worries, it's things you've promised to do.
Oh, yeah.
That article you want to read, maybe even, random thoughts about learning to play the guitar. Each of these things, no matter how small, is like an open loop that's just consuming mental energy.
Yeah, and you even highlighted his emphasis on writing each of these things down on a separate piece of paper.
Right.
What do you think? Why is he so specific about that?
I think it forces you to confront each item individually.
Okay.
Because think about it, it's so easy to kind of gloss over things when they're all crammed together on a list.
Right.
But when you isolate each item on its own slip of paper,
yeah.
You're forced to make a decision. Is this actionable? Is this trash?
Right.
Do I even need to keep this?
Okay.
So it kickstarts that decision-making process.
That's really interesting. Now, you also marked a section about his trigger list. What's that all about?
It's kind of like a checklist to make sure you're not overlooking any hidden stuff.
Okay.
It prompts you to think about common areas where uncaptured thoughts and commitments might be lurking. Things like projects, areas of responsibility, things you're waiting on from others.
Got it.
It's just a way to systematically kind of sweep your mind and make sure you've captured everything.
Okay, so let's say we've done that.
Yeah.
We've brainstormed, we've used the trigger list.
Right.
And we've got this mountain of notes.
Yeah.
Well, what do we do with all this stuff we've captured? That's where processing comes in, right?
That is exactly right.
Yeah.
Processing is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you make decisions about what to do with all those things you just captured. And the key question here is Alan's, famous, what's the next action?
Mm-hmm. And you've underlined this idea so many times, especially his emphasis on defining the very next physical, visible action required to move something forward. Why is that so crucial?
Because it cuts through the vagueness that so often paralyzes us. So, let's say you have a note that says plan vacation.
Okay.
That's not an action, that's a project.
Right.
The next action might be research potential destinations.
Okay.
Brainstorm a list of possible dates. Check everyone's schedule.
Right.
You see the difference?
Yeah, it's like taking that big amorphous blob and breaking it down into actual concrete steps that you can take. I see how that would make it a lot less overwhelming and more actionable. Yeah. Now, you also highlighted his 2-minute rule in this section.
Yeah.
Can you remind us what that is?
It's super simple, but brilliant. If a task can be completed in 2 minutes or less, do it right now.
Okay.
Don't even bother putting it on your to-do list. It's amazing how many small wins you can achieve this way.
Yeah.
And just how much mental clutter you can eliminate.
I can see how that would create a sense of momentum too.
Yeah.
To tackle those bigger tasks. It's like, clearing off your desk before you sit down to write a big report.
Yeah.
You've kind of created that space. But even with those small wins, taken care of, we still need a way to organize all those remaining actions.
Right.
And that's where I think this whole system of lists and categories comes in. And I have to admit, that's the part that's always felt a little overwhelming to me.
I understand it can seem complicated at first, but it's actually quite elegant when you get into it.
Okay.
What Alan argues is that traditional to-do lists fail because they just lump everything together. His system provides a framework for organizing all those captured items into these distinct categories, each of which has its own purpose.
Okay, so let's break those categories down then. You've really emphasized this idea of keeping them separate.
Right.
Both like visually and psychologically.
Mm.
Why is that so important?
Because it just eliminates that mental confusion that comes from having everything jumbled together. Each category represents a different kind of commitment.
Okay.
And when they're all mixed together, your brain can't trust the system.
Yeah.
It's like having, separate filing cabinets for your work, your personal life, your finances. It makes it so much easier to find what you need when you need it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are these magical categories that are going to bring order to my chaotic life?
Well, first you have projects, which is simply a list of any outcome that requires more than one action step.
Okay.
This could be anything from organize my desk to write a novel.
Right.
The key is to capture all your active projects like in one place, so you have that clear picture of what you're committed to.
So it's like a master list of all those open loops
Exactly.
that are taking up space in your psychic RAM.
That's a great way to put it.
And the beauty of having this dedicated list is that it frees your mind from having to keep track of all those details.
Yeah.
That everything's captured and that you can go back to it when you need to.
Exactly.
Okay, so projects is for those bigger picture things.
Yeah.
What about those like time-specific tasks?
Right.
That absolutely have to get done on a certain day or a certain time? Where do those go?
Those belong on your calendar, which represents the hard landscape of your schedule.
Okay.
So think appointments, meetings, deadlines, travel plans, anything that has a fixed time slot goes here.
Yep.
And this is where Alan gets really strict. He warns against using the calendar for tasks that you'd simply like to get done on a certain day.
Okay, you've underlined this in your notes. Why is he so adamant about that?
Because it undermines the integrity of the whole system. Your calendar should be sacred space,
Okay.
a reflection of your non-negotiable commitments.
Yep.
If you're constantly moving things around on your calendar, you lose trust in it.
Yeah.
It's like, having a friend who's always flaky.
Right.
You eventually just stop relying on them.
So the calendar is for the truly unmovable commitments.
Exactly.
Everything else goes into the next actions category.
Right.
Which, from your notes, seems to be like the heart of the getting things done system.
Absolutely. This is where you list all those, clearly defined actionable steps that need to be taken.
Okay.
But don't have a specific deadline. So remember our example about planning a vacation.
Yeah.
All those next actions, research destinations, brainstorm dates, check schedules, would go on your next actions list.
And you've also highlighted his suggestion about organizing next actions by context.
Yes.
Can you explain how that works and why it's so helpful?
It's about grouping actions based on, where you need to be.
Okay.
Or what tools you need to have available to complete them.
Yeah.
So, for instance, you might have a list for calls, another for at computer, another for errands, and so on.
Got it.
This way, when you're in a specific context, say, at your computer,
Right.
you can just pull up your at computer list
Yeah.
and immediately see all the actions you can take in that moment.
That's so smart.
Yeah.
It eliminates that whole, okay, I have a free hour, what should I work on?
Yeah.
You just look at your context-specific list and boom, you've got a set of actionable items ready to go.
Exactly.
Okay, so projects, calendar, next actions.
Mm-hmm.
Those are three of the categories. What are the other two?
The next one is waiting for, which is for tracking anything that you've delegated to someone else or that requires someone else to take action before you can move forward. This could be, a report you're waiting on from a colleague, approval from your boss, a package you're expecting.
Yep.
It's kind of like a holding pen for tasks that are currently out of your control, but that you need to, keep on your radar.
So it's a way to prevent those things from falling through the cracks.
Exactly.
You're not actively working on them, but you're kind of keeping tabs on their progress.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. What about the final category? What's that all about?
This is the one that some people love and some people find a little daunting. The someday maybe list.
Oh, yeah.
This is where you capture all those ideas, projects, goals that you're not ready to commit to right now,
Okay.
but that you don't want to just forget about completely.
Got it.
So this could be, that trip you want to take someday, that skill you want to learn, that book you want to read,
Yeah.
anything that kind of sparks your interest, but that isn't a current priority.
So it's like a holding pen for future aspirations. And it's a way to acknowledge your interests and goals without letting them like clutter up your active to-do list.
Yeah.
I love that. It takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
And allows you to be open to possibilities without feeling obligated to act on them right away.
Exactly.
Now, you've also made a note in your highlights about Alan's emphasis on using file folders to manage project support materials.
Right.
Why do you think he recommends this?
It's all about keeping your mind clear and focused. Imagine having all the documents and emails and notes related to your various projects just like scattered across your desk or computer.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be impossible to concentrate. File folders just create this like physical space to contain all that information.
Right.
So it's readily available when you need it, but not cluttering your mental space when you don't.
It's like having a separate brain for each project, so your main brain doesn't have to try to remember every single detail.
Exactly.
You just grab the relevant folder when you need to dive into that specific project. But you've also cautioned against using those folders as action reminders.
Absolutely. Your action lists should be the primary drivers of your workflow.
Okay.
File folders are for storing supporting information, not for managing actions.
Right.
When you rely on file folders to remind you what needs to be done, it's easy for things to just slip through the cracks.
Got it.
Your action list should be that central hub where all your commitments reside.
So the file folders provide, like, the context and details for each project,
Right.
but the actual next actions live on your next actions list.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Now, another area where I think a lot of people struggle is managing email.
Yeah.
And you've highlighted Alan's approach to email as like a source of stuff.
Right.
What stood out to you about his strategy?
He's ruthless about getting to inbox zero.
Okay.
He argues that your email inbox should be treated just like your physical in-basket.
Okay.
You know, a temporary holding place for incoming items that need to be processed. Not a repository for, like, everything. When you let emails pile up in your inbox, it just creates mental clutter and anxiety. You're constantly scanning and rescanning, trying to remember what needs your attention.
Right. And his solution is to process every email to completion.
Exactly.
You've underlined his, like, specific steps for achieving this elusive inbox zero.
Right.
Can you walk us through those?
It's a really simple but powerful process.
Okay.
First, you delete any emails that are just trash or no longer relevant.
Good.
Second, you file any emails that you need to keep for reference but don't require action.
Okay.
Third, you respond to any emails that can be handled in 2 minutes or less.
Got it.
And finally, for those emails that require a longer response or that you're waiting on a response from someone else,
Right.
move them into appropriate folders, just like we talked about with physical materials.
Okay. And you specifically mentioned using folders like action, waiting for, and read review.
Yeah.
How do these folders fit into, like, the overall system?
These digital folders act as extensions of your physical next actions and waiting for lists.
Okay.
So when you're at your computer, you can review these folders just like you'd review your physical lists.
Got it.
It ensures that all your action reminders, both physical and digital, are managed in a consistent way.
So it's about creating that unified system where both your physical and digital worlds are, like, aligned.
Exactly.
This seems like a great way to avoid that, like, mental fragmentation that often comes from juggling multiple inboxes and to-do lists.
It is.
Now, before we move on to the next part of the system, I have to ask, you've also highlighted Alan's discussion of someday maybe lists, which seem to be a concept that people either love or hate. What are your thoughts on this? Why do you think it's important?
I think it's such a brilliant tool for capturing and managing those ideas and aspirations that aren't actionable right now,
Right.
but that you don't want to forget about.
Yeah.
It's a way to give yourself permission to, like, dream and explore possibilities.
Okay.
Without letting them overwhelm your current workload.
Yeah.
You know, without a someday maybe list, those thoughts can end up just, like, cluttering up your mind.
Right.
Or even your active to-do list, which creates a sense of overwhelm. This list allows you to acknowledge those ideas without feeling obligated to act on them immediately.
So it's like giving those ideas a safe space to percolate.
Exactly.
You know, they're not forgotten, but they're not demanding your attention right now.
Right.
That's really freeing.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about maybe a way to manage those someday maybes a little better. You've also made a note about Alan's advice on using the calendar to trigger reminders for future decisions or actions.
Yes.
Can you explain how that works?
It's a way to kind of defer decisions or actions that you're not ready to make right now, but that you don't want to forget about.
Okay, cool.
So let's say you have a someday maybe item about taking a pottery class, but you're not ready to commit to it yet.
Right.
You can schedule a reminder on your calendar for, like, 3 months from now to revisit that idea. This way, you can let go of the decision for now, trusting that you'll be reminded when it's time to address it.
It's like planting a seed in the future.
Yeah.
That allows you to clear your mind and focus on your current priorities.
Exactly.
That's a great way to manage those longer-term aspirations without letting them distract you from what needs to be done now.
Right.
Okay, so we've captured everything, we've processed it, we've organized it into these different categories. What's the next step? How do we make sure that this system actually works?
Right.
That we don't just slip back into our old habits.
Right. Well, that's where the weekly review comes in. This is like the glue that holds the whole getting things done system together.
Okay.
It's the time to like clear your head, reassess your commitments, make sure nothing's slipping through the cracks. You can think of it as a weekly tune-up for your productivity engine.
I do see it marked in my notes as really important, almost like a sacred ritual. I got to admit, though, the idea of a weekly review sounds a bit, well, overwhelming. What does it actually involve? Like, walk me through it.
It's not as daunting as it sounds. I promise Alan breaks it down into a 5-step process.
Okay.
The first step is you gather all your loose papers and materials. You know, throughout the week, it's inevitable that notes and receipts and business cards and random bits of information are going to accumulate outside of your nice organized system.
Yeah.
So the weekly review is your chance to like round up all those strays and get them back where they belong.
So it's like a weekly sweep of both your physical and digital spaces.
Exactly. Making sure that nothing's lost or forgotten. And once you've gathered everything, you move on to step 2, which is processing all those captured items.
Okay.
You apply that same decision-making process we talked about before. What's the action? Is it trash? Does it need to be filed? And so on.
Got it.
The weekly review is a chance to like catch up on any processing you didn't have time for during the week.
Okay, so step 3, you've got it marked here as review your calendar.
Yeah.
Looking back and forward. Why both?
It's about making sure that all your commitments are like accounted for.
Okay.
And that you're prepared for the week ahead. So looking back at the past week, you can capture any outstanding actions or follow-ups.
Right.
Looking ahead, you can anticipate any preparations or arrangements that need to be made.
Okay.
It's a way to like connect the past, present, and future and ensure a sense of continuity and control over your schedule.
I like that. It's not just reacting to what's already happened.
Right.
It's being proactive about what's to come.
Exactly.
Okay, step 4. This one you've like circled and written, most important.
Yeah.
Next to empty your head. Sounds intense.
This is maybe the most crucial part and often the most overlooked.
Okay.
It's about capturing any new thoughts, ideas, projects, commitments that have like accumulated in your mind since your last review. This could be anything from, a brilliant business idea to a simple reminder to pick up milk on the way home. It's the time to get everything out of your head and onto paper or into your digital system. So you can free up that mental bandwidth for more productive thinking.
So it's like hitting the reset button on your mind.
Exactly.
You're clearing out the clutter.
Yeah.
And then creating space for new insights and inspiration.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how powerful this weekly review could be. What's the final step?
The final step is to review your lists. And this includes all your lists, projects, next actions, waiting for, someday maybe. It's about making sure everything is current and complete. You can check off completed items, review any relevant checklists, capture any new actions, and reevaluate your priorities. It's just a way to bring your whole system into alignment, to make sure it's an accurate reflection of your commitments and priorities.
Wow. So by the time you finish this weekly review, your mind is clear, your system is up to date.
Right.
And you're ready to tackle the week ahead.
Exactly.
With a sense of focus and purpose.
The weekly review is like pressing the refresh button on your entire life. It allows you to step back, gain perspective, and make sure you're moving in the right direction.
That brings us to another thing you marked in my notes. We've been talking about all these lists and actions.
Right.
But you also highlighted Alan's discussion of these higher levels of work.
Right.
What does he mean by that?
He's talking about the bigger picture. Your goals, your values, your vision, your purpose. While getting things done is primarily focused on managing the day-to-day.
Yeah.
Alan recognizes that true productivity is about aligning your actions with what matters most to you.
Okay, and you mentioned that he uses a 6-level model
to
represent these different horizons of work. It sounds kind of like flying an airplane.
Exactly.
You need to be aware of your altitude and adjust your course accordingly.
Yeah, he starts with the 50,000-foot level, your life purpose. This is the big why behind everything you do. What do you want to contribute to the world? What legacy do you want to leave behind?
Right.
These are big questions that, frankly, a lot of people never even take the time to explore. But Alan argues that clarifying your life purpose gives you this powerful compass for decision-making.
Okay, so that's the highest level. What's the next one?
From there, he moves down to the 40,000-foot level, your 3 to 5 year vision.
Okay.
What do you want your life to look like in the next few years? What are your long-term goals? This is where you start to get more concrete about your aspirations.
Right.
You're kind of painting a picture of your ideal future.
I'm starting to see how these different levels kind of connect.
Yeah.
Your vision provides the framework for setting goals.
Right.
Your goals then inform the actions that you take.
Exactly. Then we have the 30,000-foot level, your 1 to 2 year goals.
Okay.
What specific milestones do you need to hit to achieve that long-term vision? This is where you break down those big dreams into manageable steps.
Okay, and then we move down to the 20,000-foot level.
Right.
Which you have as areas of responsibility. What does that involve?
This is all about identifying the different roles you play in your life, at work, at home, in your community. What are the different hats you wear and the commitments that come with each role? It's about understanding the full scope of your responsibilities.
Okay.
So you can make sure that all areas of your life are getting the attention they deserve.
So it's like creating a job description for your entire life, not just your work life.
That's a great way to think about it.
Okay. What's the next level down from there?
That would be the 10,000-foot level.
Yep.
Your current projects.
Okay.
What are you working on right now that will help you, fulfill those roles and achieve those goals? This is where you start to see the connection between your big picture aspirations and your day-to-day activities.
Okay. And finally, at ground level, we have the runway, which is your current actions. What are the very next physical steps you need to take to move those projects forward? This is where the rubber meets the road.
Right.
Where your grand vision gets translated into concrete action.
Yeah, it's a beautiful model because it shows how everything is interconnected. Your actions should be aligned with your projects.
Right.
Your projects with your areas of responsibility, your areas of responsibility with your goals, and so on, all the way up to your life purpose.
This whole idea of aligning our actions with our higher purpose, I really like that. It's like we're creating a roadmap for our lives.
Exactly.
Making sure that every step we take is moving us in the right direction. But let's get real for a moment. Even with like a perfect system and a clear vision, there's still going to be times when we're faced with multiple options.
Yeah.
And we just don't know what to do next.
Right.
So how do we make decisions in those moments of uncertainty?
That's a common challenge, especially in today's world, right? We're constantly bombarded with demands and interruptions and competing priorities.
Yeah.
But Alan provides a really helpful framework for making these in-the-moment decisions. He calls it the 4 criteria model.
Okay.
And the first criterion is context. What can you do right now, given your location and the tools you have available? It's about being realistic. If you're stuck in traffic, it doesn't make sense to try to tackle a task that requires your computer.
Right.
Focus on what's possible in that moment.
So first, consider your context.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the next one?
The second criterion is time. How much time do you have available before your next commitment? It's about matching your actions to those windows of time that you have.
Okay.
So if you only, 10 minutes before your next meeting, choose an action that can be completed within that time frame.
Got it. So time. Check. What about the third one?
The third is energy. How much mental and physical energy do you have right now? This is about being honest with yourself. If you're feeling drained after a long meeting, it's probably not the best time to tackle a complex or demanding task.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
We often try to push through when we're tired.
Yeah.
But that rarely leads to good work.
Exactly.
Okay, so context, time, energy. What's that final criterion?
The final one is priority. What's the most important thing to do right now, given all the other factors we've discussed? So once you've considered context, time, and energy, you can then evaluate your options based on priority, making sure you're focusing on the things that truly matter.
Okay, this 4 criteria model seems like incredibly useful.
Yeah.
It takes the guesswork out of decision-making.
Right.
Allows you to make these like conscious, deliberate choices about how you spend your time.
Right.
Okay. You also flagged a section in my notes where Alan talks about 3 different types of work we do. Seems like a simple distinction, but I think it's really profound. Can you remind us what those are?
Yeah, absolutely. He categorizes work as predefined work,
Okay.
work as it shows up,
Okay.
and defining your work. So predefined work is what we, plan to do.
Right.
The tasks and projects that are on our lists.
Mm.
Work as it shows up is all the unexpected stuff that lands in our inboxes and on our desks.
Yeah.
The interruptions, the requests, the urgent demands.
Right.
And then defining your work is all about clarifying your goals, your priorities, your vision, the thinking, planning, and strategizing.
Yeah.
That often gets neglected in the hustle and bustle of daily life.
I think this is so important because it highlights that constant tension between doing the work we plan to do and responding to the demands of the moment.
Exactly.
It's like we're constantly being pulled in different directions.
Right. And that's why this getting things done system is so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a framework for managing all 3 types of work. So you can make conscious choices about how you spend your time and energy. It's a way to regain control and achieve a sense of balance even in the midst of chaos.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Yeah.
This idea of achieving a mind like water. It's such a beautiful metaphor. Can you elaborate on that? What does it actually feel like to have a mind like water?
So imagine a still pond, right?
Okay.
When you drop a pebble into the pond, it creates those ripples that spread outward.
Right.
Similarly, when we're confronted with a new task, an idea, a request, we can create these waves of mental activity, disrupting our sense of calm and focus.
Mm-hmm.
But a mind that's trained in the principles of getting things done is like that pond with a smooth, clear surface.
Okay.
Those ripples of mental activity quickly dissipate.
Mm-hmm.
And the mind can return to a state of stillness.
So it's not about suppressing those thoughts or feelings.
Right.
It's about letting them flow through us without creating chaos or disruption.
Exactly. It's about acknowledging them, processing them, and then letting them go, trusting that our system will remind us of what needs to be done when it needs to be done.
Right.
It's about freeing ourselves from that tyranny of the to-do list, allowing us to be fully present in the moment without the constant nagging of those uncaptured commitments.
It sounds almost effortless, like riding a wave instead of being tossed around by the ocean.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It's about finding that sweet spot between being responsive to what life throws at us and staying grounded in our own sense of purpose and direction.
Okay, in my notes, it looks like you had a couple questions about Alan's discussion of intuition.
Oh, yeah.
Something about trusting our gut instincts.
Yeah, it's fascinating how he talks about that.
Yeah.
He argues that once we have a clear system in place, once we've captured all our commitments and clarified our priorities, we can start to rely on our intuition more to guide our decisions about what to do next. He's not suggesting we abandon logic or planning altogether, but it's more about recognizing that our intuition can often be a powerful source of wisdom, especially when it's informed by that solid understanding of our commitments and priorities.
It's like our intuition becomes more reliable.
Yeah.
When it's not clouded by mental clutter and unprocessed commitments.
Exactly.
It can finally speak to us clearly because we've created the space for it.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance between planning and spontaneity.
Right.
Allowing ourselves to be guided by both our heads and our hearts.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something really practical.
Okay.
You highlighted a bunch of key points from Alan's discussion about setting up a physical workspace that supports productivity. And this resonates with me because I know, my desk can often feel like a source of chaos rather than a source of inspiration.
I hear that Alan has some great advice on this topic. First and foremost, he emphasizes creating a clear separation between our workspaces and our living spaces.
Okay.
It's about establishing those boundaries that allow us to, fully engage with our work when we're in our workspaces and then fully disengage when we're not.
So no more working from the couch or checking emails in bed.
Right. We need to designate a specific space for work and then treat that space with respect.
Okay. And once you've established that dedicated workspace, what else does he suggest?
He says, minimize distractions by keeping it clean, organized, and free of clutter. It's about creating an environment that supports focus and concentration.
Right.
Rather than one that's constantly bombarding us with with visual and mental noise.
Like creating a sanctuary for your mind.
Yeah.
A place where you can go to do your best work. What else?
He also recommends having all the tools you need readily accessible, your pens, paper, staplers, file folders.
Right.
It's about removing any barriers to action, making it as easy as possible to get things done.
Right.
When everything has a place and is within reach, you're less likely to get bogged down in that minutia of searching for what you need.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah. It's about creating an environment that supports, like, flow and efficiency. Exactly.
Now let's talk about something that I think is really at the heart of getting things done, the psychological benefits of capturing and organizing our commitments. And you highlighted a bunch of key insights from Alan's discussion of this. What really stood out to you?
One of the most profound benefits is just the sense of psychological relief that comes from capturing everything that has our attention. It's like taking a heavy burden off our shoulders, freeing us from the mental weight of trying to remember everything. And then that process of organizing those captured items into a system that we trust, it just further enhances that sense of control. It's about creating order out of chaos. Replacing that feeling of overwhelm with a sense of clarity and confidence.
It's like finally being able to exhale after holding your breath for too long.
Yeah.
You can relax and trust that everything is handled. And you even compared it to like the feeling of cleaning and organizing a cluttered room.
Can you expand on that a little bit?
As you sort through those piles of clothes and books and papers, you start to feel lighter and more energized, right?
Right.
Similarly, as we process and organize our mental clutter, we experience that renewed sense of spaciousness and freedom. It's like we're creating space for our minds to breathe.
It's a powerful analogy.
Right.
And I think it speaks to that, like, transformative potential of this whole system.
Yeah.
It's not just about being more efficient. It's about improving our overall well-being.
Right.
But, let's be real. A lot of people hear about this system and they think, ugh, that sounds like a lot of work.
Right.
I'm already overwhelmed. How can I possibly add another layer of complexity to my life?
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And Alan acknowledges that setting up the system and processing all of our accumulated stuff can feel daunting, especially at first. But he argues that initial investment of time and energy really pays off in the long run. He compares it to, like, the effort required to learn a new sport or a musical instrument.
Okay.
It takes time and practice to master the skills.
Yeah.
But once you do, the rewards are immense.
So it's about having that long-term perspective.
Exactly.
We're not looking for a quick fix. We're looking for a sustainable system that's going to support us for years to come.
Yeah.
And you also highlighted the fact that it actually becomes more intuitive and efficient over time.
As we build those habits of capturing, processing, and organizing, it becomes second nature. We don't even have to think about it anymore. It just happens.
Yeah.
And the more we use the system, the more we refine it to fit our individual needs and preferences.
So it's a process of continuous improvement.
Exactly.
Just like, we are in every other aspect of our lives.
Right.
Okay, let's address another common concern. No matter how well we plan, things are going to come up that throw us off course.
Life happens.
So how does getting things done help us handle those unexpected interruptions and changes in plans?
It's all about flexibility and adaptability.
Okay.
Alan suggests that when we're faced with an unexpected interruption, we take a deep breath, reassess the situation, and then make a conscious choice about how to respond.
Got it.
So if the interruption is truly urgent and important, we might need to adjust our plans.
Yeah.
But if it's something that can be handled later, we can simply capture it in our system and then return to our predefined work.
So it's about being responsive without losing sight of our priorities. We're not like rigidly adhering to a preset schedule. We're allowing ourselves to flow with the demands of the moment while staying true to our overall goals.
That's a great way to put it. It's about finding that balance between structure and flexibility, between responding to the world around us and staying grounded in our own sense of direction.
Now, one of the things that really struck me about getting things done is that connection between productivity and peace of mind. Alan argues that when our minds are clear and our commitments are organized, we experience this deep sense of calm and well-being.
It's like our outer world reflects our inner world. When our minds are cluttered, our lives feel chaotic.
Right.
But when our minds are clear, our lives feel more peaceful and harmonious.
Exactly. And you even compared this state of mind to like the experience of being in a state of flow.
Yes, that feeling of effortless concentration, of being fully absorbed in the task at hand.
Yeah.
Where time seems to melt away.
Right. And Alan argues that getting things done is like a pathway to achieving that state more consistently.
It's about creating that mental and emotional space to do our best work, to connect with our deepest values, and to live a life that is both productive and fulfilling.
That brings us to, I think, another crucial aspect of getting things done. The power of saying no.
Yeah, this is a big one.
This is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, myself included.
Right.
We want to be helpful.
Yeah.
We want to please others, and we often feel obligated to say yes to every request that comes our way.
Right. But Alan argues that saying no is essential for protecting our time and energy. He suggests that every time we say yes to something, we're implicitly saying no to something else.
Right.
It's about recognizing the opportunity cost of our commitments.
Okay.
Understanding that every choice we make has consequences. We need to be selective with our time and energy, focusing on the things that truly matter to us.
It's a powerful reminder. And it ties back into that idea of aligning our actions with our higher purpose.
Exactly.
If we're constantly saying yes to things that don't align with our goals and values, we're essentially saying no to the life we want to create.
Precisely. And that's why it's so important to develop a clear sense of our priorities, when we know what's truly important to us. It becomes much easier to say no to the things that don't matter.
I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
It seems like getting things done is not just about getting things done. It's about creating a life that is aligned with our values, our goals, our aspirations.
Yeah.
It's about creating a life that we love.
That's beautifully put. And that brings us to one of the most inspiring aspects of getting things done. The possibility of achieving a state of relaxed control.
Relaxed control. That sounds like a paradox. How can we be both relaxed and in control?
It is a paradoxical concept, but it really captures the essence of what Alan is trying to help us achieve.
Okay.
Which is the ability to be both highly productive and deeply at peace. It's the feeling of having a handle on everything without being stressed or overwhelmed.
It sounds almost like a superpower.
It is, in a way, and it's available to anyone who's willing to embrace these principles.
Okay.
It's about trusting our system, knowing that all our commitments are captured and organized, and allowing ourselves to be fully present in the moment. It's a state of grace that emerges naturally when we let go of the need to control everything.
I love that relaxed control. That's a goal worth striving for. Now, you also made a note about Alan's suggestion for kind of maintaining our system through these regular clean sweeps. What's that all about?
It's about preventing our system from, becoming cluttered and overwhelming.
Okay.
He suggests periodically going through our workspaces and our digital files, purging anything that's no longer relevant or necessary.
Got it.
It's like spring cleaning for our minds and our environments. It creates a sense of spaciousness and renewal.
I love that it's like giving ourselves permission to let go of the things that are no longer serving us.
Exactly.
We're creating space for new possibilities to emerge.
Right.
Okay. I think we've covered a lot of ground here. Is there anything else that stood out to you from your notes or your highlights?
Well, one common pitfall I see people fall into is overcomplicating the system.
Okay.
They add more and more lists and categories and subcategories, and it just becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in that idea of having the perfect system with every detail meticulously categorized.
Yeah. But Alan's advice is to keep things as simple as possible.
Okay.
Start with those basic categories that he outlines, and then only add complexity if you really need to.
Right.
It's about finding that sweet spot between structure and flexibility.
Right.
Creating a system that works for you, not against you.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah.
Don't let the system become the master.
Right.
It's a tool to support you, not a burden to carry.
Yeah.
You also highlighted Alan's emphasis on self-care. Why do you think that's important?
It's so crucial.
Yeah.
We can't be truly productive if we're not taking care of our physical, mental, and emotional well-being.
Yep.
Alan encourages us to make time for exercise, for sleep, for healthy eating, for relaxation. It's about treating ourselves with the same care and attention that we give to our work.
Because at the end of the day, our well-being is the foundation for everything else we do.
Absolutely.
If we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not going to be able to show up fully in any area of our lives. Now, I know you're a big fan of using technology to support your productivity.
I am.
So has Alan's perspective on technology influenced your approach at all?
Absolutely. Alan's a big advocate for using technology to streamline our workflows and simplify our lives. He encourages us to explore all those different apps and software programs out there that can help us capture, process, organize, and review our commitments. It's about finding the tools that work best for you. Whether it's a simple note-taking app or a comprehensive project management system, technology can be a really powerful ally in our quest for productivity, as long as we use it intentionally and don't let it become a source of distraction.
That's a great point. Technology is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used for good or for ill. We need to be mindful of how we're using it and make sure that it's serving us, not the other way around.
Now, one of the things that I've found helpful in my own journey with getting things done is having a sense of accountability. And you've highlighted Alan's suggestion about, maybe finding a partner or a group of people who are also committed to implementing this system. Why do you think that's helpful?
It's incredibly valuable to have that support system. A group of people who understand the challenges and rewards of this whole process. It's a way to share our experiences, support each other, and hold each other accountable for staying on track. It's about creating a community, like-minded individuals who are all striving to live more productive and fulfilling lives. It's like having a team of cheerleaders and coaches encouraging us to keep going when things get tough and celebrating our successes along the way. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into getting things done.
We have.
We've explored the core principles, the psychology, the practical tips, and even the deeper implications of this system. So what are your key takeaways for our listener as they kind of embark on their own journey with this?
I think for me, it all comes back to that idea of mind like water. It's about creating that sense of inner peace and clarity, even amidst the chaos of modern life. When we have a trusted system in place, we can handle anything that comes our way with grace and equanimity. We're no longer constantly reacting to events. We're responding with intention and purpose.
I love that. It's like we're shifting from a state of constant overwhelm to a state of what you called relaxed control. We're not trying to force things to happen. We're allowing them to unfold naturally. Trusting that we have the tools and the awareness to navigate whatever arises.
Exactly. And that sense of trust is key. When we trust our system, we can let go of that need to control everything. Which frees up so much mental and emotional energy for those more creative and fulfilling pursuits.
Now, speaking of trust, you highlighted a section in my notes where Alan talks about managing our agreements with ourselves. And how that ties into the power of that collection habit. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I have to admit, that part always felt a little abstract to me.
It's one of those insights that seems really simple at first. But the more you think about it, the more profound it becomes. Alan points out that we're constantly making these little agreements with ourselves throughout the day. I'll respond to that email later. I'll pick up milk on the way home. I'll finish that report tomorrow. And every unfulfilled agreement creates this tiny bit of mental tension.
It's like we're carrying around all these invisible IOUs to ourselves.
Exactly.
And they weigh us down without us even realizing it.
And when those unfulfilled agreements start to pile up, that's when we start to feel overwhelmed and anxious. Alan argues that the act of capturing those agreements, writing them down, getting them out of our heads, that's the first step to resolving that tension. It's like making those agreements conscious, acknowledging that we've made a commitment to ourselves. And
then by processing those captured agreements, defining the next action, deciding what to do with them, we can start to regain that sense of control.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility for our commitments rather than letting them control us.
And here's something really interesting. You also highlighted Alan's observation that renegotiating those agreements with ourselves can actually be a source of relief and even motivation.
It's so true.
I did mark that passage. It was a real aha moment for me.
I
realized that I often felt like guilty or stressed when I couldn't fulfill all the agreements I'd made with myself.
Yeah.
But Alan argues that it's perfectly okay to renegotiate those agreements as long as we do it consciously.
As long as we're intentional about it.
Right. It's about giving ourselves permission to change our minds, to adapt to new circumstances, to prioritize what's truly important.
Exactly. It's about being honest with ourselves about what we can realistically accomplish rather than trying to do everything at once.
And he suggests that the act of renegotiating agreement can actually be motivating.
Yeah.
Because it clarifies our priorities and reinforces our commitment to the things that matter most.
Yeah.
It's like saying to ourselves, okay, I'm not going to beat myself up for not getting to everything on my list.
Yeah.
But I am going to focus my energy on the things that are truly important to me.
Exactly. And that brings us back to that trigger list as a tool for capturing and managing those unfulfilled agreements.
Right.
By regularly reviewing that list, we can identify any agreements that are causing us stress or draining our energy, and then consciously choose to either fulfill them, renegotiate them, or let them go entirely.
It's like we're taking inventory of our commitments.
Right.
Making sure that they're still aligned with our values and our goals.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about capturing, processing, organizing, reviewing, renegotiating our agreements. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to actually doing the work.
Yeah.
So how do we find the motivation to actually get things done, especially when we're faced with those tasks that we're not particularly excited about?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Really?
And Alan offers some really great advice. First and foremost, he emphasizes connecting our tasks and projects to our values and goals.
Yeah.
When we understand the why behind our work, it becomes so much easier to find the energy and enthusiasm to actually do it.
It's like tapping into a deeper source of motivation.
Right.
One that's not based on external rewards or punishments, but on our own sense of purpose and meaning.
Exactly. And when we're feeling stuck or unmotivated, it can be helpful to remind ourselves of that bigger picture of how the task at hand is contributing to something we truly care about.
Right. And he also suggests breaking down like large, overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable steps.
Absolutely.
This makes the work feel less daunting, more achievable.
Right.
And it creates that sense of momentum as we progress.
It's like climbing a mountain, right?
Yeah.
If we focus on the entire mountain, it can feel impossible.
Right.
But if we just focus on taking one step at a time, eventually we'll reach the summit.
Okay. And finally, Alan recommends creating a reward system to celebrate our accomplishments.
Absolutely.
It's about acknowledging our progress and giving ourselves that positive reinforcement, which can further boost our motivation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We often focus so much on what we haven't done yet that we forget to celebrate the wins.
Right.
It's so important to acknowledge our efforts and give ourselves credit for the progress we've made.
Now, another key aspect of maintaining a productive workflow, I think, is managing our energy levels.
Yeah.
And you highlighted several key points from Alan's discussion of this.
Yeah.
What are some of the most important things for our listeners to remember?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's crucial to be aware of our natural energy rhythms.
Okay.
Some of us are most productive in the morning while others hit their stride in the afternoon or evening.
Right.
The key is to identify our peak performance times and schedule our most demanding tasks accordingly. We need to work with our natural energy cycles, not against them.
It's like listening to our bodies.
Right.
And honoring our own unique rhythms. We all have different needs and preferences.
Absolutely.
And there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this.
And Alan also stresses the importance of taking breaks and getting enough sleep.
Right.
When we're well-rested and energized, we're able to focus better, think more clearly, make better decisions.
Right.
He also suggests incorporating, physical activity into our daily routines. Exercise not only improves our physical health, but it also boosts our energy levels, reduces stress, and enhances our cognitive function.
So it's about taking care of our whole selves,
right?
Mind, body, and spirit.
Yes.
To create that sustainable foundation for productivity.
Exactly. It's not about pushing ourselves to the limit. It's about creating a lifestyle that supports our well-being and allows us to thrive.
And that, I think, is the ultimate goal of getting things done.
Yes.
To create a life that is both productive and fulfilling.
Right.
A life that is aligned with our values and aspirations.
Yes.
A life that allows us to fully express our potential.
Beautifully said.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into getting things done.
We have.
We explored the core principles, the psychology, the practical tips, and even like the deeper implications of this system. What are your final thoughts for our listeners as they kind of embark on their own journey with this?
I would just say, remember that this is a journey, not a destination. There's no need to get everything perfect right away. Start small, experiment with different approaches, and find what works best for you.
Right.
And most importantly, be kind to yourself along the way.
Yeah.
It's not about achieving some unattainable ideal of productivity. It's about creating a system that supports you in living a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
Beautifully said. And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning.
That's right.
The real magic happens when you start applying these principles in your own life.
Exactly.
So take what you've learned, experiment with it, and see what happens. You might be surprised at the transformative power of getting things done.